president talked about the challenges of accessing international financing.
Yeah.
And he talked about even the UN Secretary General, I think, to me, was even bolder in his statement. And he said there are countries in Europe which can access credit at friendlier rates. And yet the economies are worse off than countries in Africa, for instance. And yet we are the ones at risk of debt default. So how do we change this narrative, this tired narrative, as Professor Migai Oketch phrases it? I saw you nodding, Irene, ferociously when Dr. was speaking. I heard you somewhere with Eric Latif on Spice FM, and you were saying Africa is not liberated. Let's hear more on that coming up on the other side of this break. Oh, you're here.
Friends becoming family. Home-cooked meal. Ice-cold Coke. That's the recipe for magic. Make your mealtime more magical. Buy any participating pack. Check under the cap to get your code and stand a chance to win free food shopping for a year, plus millions in instant cash, airtime and shopping vouchers.
The Policyholders Compensation Fund, PCF, is a state corporation under the National Treasury and Economic Planning that was established under the Insurance Act with the primary mandate of providing compensation to the claimants of an insurer placed under statutory management or whose license has been cancelled. It was established for the secondary purpose of creating confidence in the insurance sector. Policyholders Compensation Fund, Dhamana ya Bima Yako.
Hey, boss. Kwani uliomokaga na tujui? Ama uliingia wash?
Wash kitu gani? Wacha nikupeleke na rada. Hata wewe unaweza anza na the new Havana Estate Phase 5 in Nakuru. You can invest in an eighth of an acre just only for 629,000 Kenyan shillings. Mali kitu safi. And 15 minutes drive from Nakuru town.
Na sasa kama sina hiyo pesa yote.
Lakini kwa watu kama wewe unaweza anza kulipia mali yako mdogo mdogo.
Tumbe kwanza.
All right, welcome back to, I almost said AM Live. I'm so used to doing live front and center. I've been caught with my thermos here, but you will allow me, please. But we are having a conversation around Africa and where we are 60 years on, and how do we switch the narrative, change the narrative from victim to that of equal partner, equal contributor to this conversation, and part of that is in the area of climate change. But before then, I thought you could elaborate a little bit on your view that Africa is not liberated, Irene.
Well, Doc has alluded to part of it, is we can be optimistic, and it's good to be optimistic and to have hope. But we also have to be real, and it is important to have a historical analysis of things, of where we've come from. And we've talked about the financial architecture, for instance. When those institutions were making decisions and declaring that all humans are equal, liberty, and all those things, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are saying, at that point, the whole of the continent was under colonialism. So the playing field was not leveled from the word go, and it has never been leveled. And the market is not as free as it claims. Because you've also talked about people who have credit at friendlier rates. We inherited debt. Imagine, you are fresh off the shackles of colonialism, you have a debt to pay. And I'll ask you to read the speech that Sankara did in the AU meeting, when he really talks about that debt issue. And the ridiculousness, how do you inherit debt? You've just gotten independence, which is not really independence, because we still have those colonialists here they're not whispering, they're here. We have settlers in Kenya, in Zambia, in South Africa. In all settler colonies, basically, we still have settlers there, and we have never resolved the land question, for instance. So I have lived through neoliberal times. I was born in the 90s when the structural adjustments had just hit. So the reality of free education, free healthcare, I did not get it. My parents took loans to take me through school. I have paid through my nose to go through campus. So when you tell us that we are independent and we are liberated and we are 40% unemployed and you have 80% of your young people at the risk of not being able to ever access land in their life, then what kind of liberation are you talking about? When you're saying you're liberated and there's a report that says within a span of 2 years you pushed half of your population into poverty, then what kind of liberation is that? You see, when you tell us people who are on survival mode every single time, we are thinking about where rent will come from, where food will come from. We are now in the global index as one of the hungriest countries. So what liberation really are we talking about? That was what I was saying, that for this thing to make sense and for us to have people connect with institutions, people have to have very basic dignity. And we can't, African presidents also, it's not just about talking and going out there and saying, we need to come to the table as partners, and then behind the scenes you do the opposite. You're pounding your citizens to the highest bidder. You're telling people, don't go to university, go to TVET, so then we can sell that labor to some other place. So you're not even inspiring people to use the skills that they have got in school to propel the place that they are. We are already selling the narrative that outside there is better than the continent. And so even as we give people hope, we have to see very practical steps. People need to have food. We are rationing water right now. What kind of liberation is that if we can't have something as basic as water? Water is life.
Okay.
So what kind of liberation really are we talking about if we don't have very basic dignity? Article 43 of our Constitution, and the same 43 in international law is still the same Article 43. Social and economic rights, healthcare, education, food, water, social security. As I think we even forgot about pension, because even like real employment, the way Doc here and Prof is employed, I don't think we have that luxury of accessing permanent and pensionable employment. So we have been living through very precarious times. As we continue to grow up, the times worsen and worsen and worsen. So for us to connect with this liberation, our very basic dignity has to be met.